Welcome, friends. So it has been a minute since I've been on YouTube. I went into deep hibernation this winter and I've been writing a lot on my blog, but the idea of speaking on camera it wasn't feeling aligned. There's a lot that's come through that I want to share, and the first one that I want to share is a reflection point. I had a lot of reflection points come through, and my understanding of reflection point is something very common in our everyday lives that is a reminder of who and what we truly are. So this one was really interesting because there's a lot of synchronicities around it, and I'm going to share the reflection point and then share all of the synchronicities around a channeled book that was just released and 3i Atlas. So if you're curious, you can check that out. But I'll share the reflection point first, just to get it out there. Okay, so it involves precipitation. The reflection point message was essentially that precipitation starts as water vapor in the atmosphere. And if we think about the atmosphere, we can't see all of it, right? We can get a sense of it, but we can't actually experience from this vantage point all of the atmosphere that is around Earth. Now, if we, say, go in a spaceship, we can then experience the atmosphere, but we have to lift. Our vantage point, our experience has to lift. And when we're looking at the atmosphere, it's pretty uniform, yet it's made up of different components, one of which is water vapor. A very small percentage of it is water vapor, but it is there. And again, you can't look at it and be like, oh, there's water vapor, I see it. But water vapor then turns into clouds, something that we can see. So again, we're moving from this sort of vast oneness into something formed that's separate from another, right? You can see individual clouds, but they are all made up of water vapor, condensed into a more dense form that we can see, yet a cloud isn't dense, right? You can't sit on a cloud. And this was really interesting because the cloud came through in a few different ways. And if this resonates, have fun with it. Saw it first as a cloud could be this idea of an individuated soul. Now, my understanding of this has changed greatly, and the next video that I'm going to do will speak to that, so stay tuned. But let's say you're thinking about who you are as an individuated soul on its individuated journey through all of its lifetimes. That can be seen as the cloud. And then every little water droplet, every little snowflake is a lifetime. You can tune into one. You can also see all of them at once. But this idea that they're all happening, you can kind of get that energy, that essence of that idea when you're just simply looking at precipitation, the rain falling, the snow falling. There's a vastness to it, and you know that there's individual droplets, individual snowflakes, but you see it as an event, as a uniformity, as a cohesion between all of them, right? You're not just seeing a raindrop, which you can also when it first starts or when it's slowing down. The more you read into it, the more you realize it's not an apples to apples comparison, right? So we're really just looking at the essence of it, the energy of it, not to break it down and to be like, well, actually, that doesn't make sense because X, Y, and Z. It's a reflection point, right? It's just we're tapping into the energy or essence of it. So it falls from this cloud, which you can see as an individuated soul. You can also see it as an oversoul, where then every single drop, every single snowflake is a soul, is a person having a life, is a being having a life. That one droplet can be a bee or it can be a human. You can think of it as that, kind of like the oversoul of Gaia. You can also think of it as the oversoul, and if you don't like that term, you don't have to use it. You can see it as, the oversoul or what have you, as humanity, and each droplet is a human. So you can see it in so many different ways. The point of it is that we go from this vast oneness into this form a nod to form, something that can be seen and individuated. And then all of these many little droplets that are of that same water vapor, that are of that same vastness, having these brief moments of individuation and then returning to the ground, where it seeps into the ground, it turns back into water vapor. So they all have different experiences, but it goes from the sense of oneness into this very brief little moment of individuality back into oneness. And it extended this idea of snow, this idea that every single snowflake is unique. And it snowed a lot this winter. And I started revisiting snowflakes, and I realized that if you've ever looked at a snowflake, it's like sacred geometry falling from the sky. Right? If you think about every snowflake as this beautiful geometrical shape, it's like literally being bathed in sacred geometry. And then when you think about the fact that it's coming to that shape because of the nature of it, the water droplet doesn't necessarily look like that until it's frozen, but that essence is there. And so whenever there's precipitation, it's kind of like this idea of sacred geometry. And then when you think about the fact that we are 60-70% by volume water, at the molecular level, 99% water, the idea that we are sacred geometry. It's kind of this really beautiful nod and reminder of the oneness of it all, and this brief moment of individuality, or the experience of individuality and what that offers us. But the reminder that we begin in oneness and we end in oneness, and we have this moment where we experience this sense of individuality within the context of that we are also with so many other beings having the experience of individuality, right? It's not just one raindrop or one snowflake, though there's a whole experience where I would just see a single snowflake at times when it wasn't possible to be snowing, and that's a story for another day. But it's interesting, the idea that was I'm not going to share that right now, but I will in time, because that was kind of crazy actually. But it also made me realize that this teaching has been coming through in dribs and drabs. And so that is the reflection point, right? That we start in oneness, we have this brief moment of the experience of individuality amongst many others that are also having it, and then we return back into oneness. And the synchronicities around this were really interesting, because I don't usually remember when these occur, but I know that this happened on December 18th, because the next day was December 19th, which is when 3i Atlas was closest to the Earth. The reason I know that is because Pepper had a vet appointment that day, and we had to drive a long ways to go. And I was worried because of the forecast, and so I rescheduled it. And that day, it rained the entire day. And then when the sun set, it turned into snow. So December 18th, I got this message. The next day, it's a whole day of precipitation on top of the fact that 3i Atlas is closest to the Earth. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then I started listening to this newly released channeled book where they talk literally about this, not word for word, but very close, this idea of precipitation and oneness. And I can't remember how they said it, but it was very similar to what had come through. So I thought, okay, this is all confirmation that this is one to share. All right, friends, so that is the reflection point and the synchronicities. The synchronicities took much faster than I thought. But yeah, I'm curious your thoughts, so feel free to share. It may or may not resonate, so take what resonates. If it doesn't, also get curious around that, because there's a lot of potent energy when something doesn't resonate. It can also offer us a lot of information if we don't reject it, but we get curious around it. So, until next time, friends, stay curious.